Hey, group leaders, welcome to week 4. This is Leading Lessons, and this week we have Cody Harrison with us. Cody is a men's starting point leader and a former dinner group leader. Welcome, Cody, to Leading Lessons. We're glad you could join us.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Cody, let's start with this. What do you enjoy about Starting Point?
Yeah, this has been one of my favorite things I've done. I've led Starting Point for 3 sessions now, and this is kind of as we're doing it together as a church, this is my fourth time through it, and I have to tell you, every single time, every single lesson, I learned something differently, both personally. Look, I know the dynamics now are a little different that we're doing it together as a church, but
Mm-hmm.
typically, when we lead Starting Point, we get people who are coming to us with a lot of questions and not really, maybe coming into their faith for the first time, maybe coming from different religious backgrounds, or maybe not being faith believers at all, but giving it a try. And so it's always very spicy. The questions are always great,
Yeah.
what it does is it pushes me at a personal level
Mm.
each and every time because we want to definitely try to be responsive and understand and give folks a very honest opinion and opportunity. So yeah, it really does give me something that I learned and kind of grow up on each and every time that I've been through it. I had a
Yeah.
lot of different experiences too with a lot of different people and some life changing experiences that I've witnessed out of this. And, my buddy Adam Sidor and I have led this for a couple of times. And remember one time we had a gentleman who was he came from a completely, atheist background and used to
Mm.
listen to atheist podcasts and was a non-believer to the 10th degree.
Yeah.
And by the time he started Starting Point, he had his mind made up, and he knew that God was really in his life. But through Starting Point, he was totally involved. The questions he asked and the input that he gave,
Yeah.
and then it was great to see 4 or 5 months later that he was baptized at the church.
That's
That was
awesome.
one. Yeah, it's a very great
The
story.
ultimate win there.
It really was, and
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I love doing this and being a part of it. But not all the stories are, those kind of,
Mm-hmm.
gigantic, put on the poster board, wins. We had Adam and I were part of another session last summer. We had a guy and his brother, who participated, and on the one hand, one of the brothers was very faithful and
Mm-hmm.
entrenched deeply in his faith, but the brother was not necessarily. But he came to Starting Point each and every week, with
Yeah.
lots of questions and took notes. Very, very, very cynical at times and very skeptic, but always, with his, very best effort. And
Yeah.
it was a true joy. But at the end of it, he kind of said, this is, I'm not sure if this is for me. I learned a lot and this has given me a lot to grow up on, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is for me. And, and while that was a little discouraging personally, it was also, I get it. This is real life. These are real
Yeah.
people with real questions and real concerns. And I think we meet so many of those in Starting Point. So that's really what I like about it the most.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great, and I think about both of those cases. At least they're getting the chance to own their own faith, right? And even if it's not there yet, at least like that ball's being moved forward. I think, and at least like being able to engage in those questions is really important as well. So that's really cool that you're getting to experience this a lot. And I think you're talking about like you're getting to do this in Starting Point, and I think maybe a little advantage that the groups have of doing Starting Point and then continuing on is that some of these relationships that they're establishing, like it might not be 8 weeks, but at least like you're going to have more time with them after this series is over to hopefully continuing to help them in their own journey with this. So, but
Yeah,
go ahead.
and I think that's right. And one of the things
Mm-hmm.
that I've always tried to stress is that, hey, come into this and don't be afraid to wrestle.
Mm. Yeah.
Scripture is complete with many folks that wrestle with God nonstop, scream at God sometimes, and use that opportunity here to ask the tough questions, to go through those challenging moments. And yeah, it may not always work out or turn out to be or end up in a baptism, but there is progress. There is, and that's rewarding. That's rewarding to see, and
Yeah.
that's what this is all about.
Cool. So this week's lessons on rules, what kind of rules are we talking about here, Cody?
Well, there are a lot of rules, but we can go on and on. But these are the real rules. This is really God's law, and that's
Hmm.
what's. It was a great session because I mean this for the leaders out there who are teaching this, this is really, this is a session where folks get inspired.
Hmm.
Rules invoke a lot of passion from a lot of different people,
Yeah.
and especially in the religious context.
Hmm.
There, the religion is, complete with, good stories and bad stories about the rules we should follow, the law we should follow, what it means in terms of being in God's grace and what it means in terms of our salvation. And there's just so much there, so much more than we could ever try to accomplish as starting point leaders. But it's a great opportunity to engage in that conversation because this is really the way to kind of show that the law, God's law, it's not a condition of being with Him, or it's not a condition of receiving His grace, or it's not a
Yeah.
condition of receiving His love. It's something that holds us together. His law binds us together, and sure, we're going to break the law. We're going to break the
Hmm.
rules just like we do on a daily basis. But to have this conversation about what it means in terms of our relationship with God is really it's a great conversation. It invokes a lot of passion, that's for sure, and is different from societal rules that we follow
Yeah.
today. Um, but there's a
Yeah.
lot
Where
of
these rules aren't meant to exclude, right? It's where society sometimes will create rules to make sure that we exclude others.
That's exactly right, and
Yeah.
that's the key point here. These rules, God's law, is what it means to be with Him. What it means to follow Him, what it means to be part of Him. But not following God's law does not mean that God does not love us, and that's one of the
Yeah.
greatest points to deliver here because folks have grown up on that. That if I sin, then God's not going to love me.
Yeah.
Well, this is a lot different than that.
Hmm.
There's consequences. There's
Yeah.
always consequences if you break the rules, but it doesn't mean you're going to be excluded. Doesn't mean you're going to get kicked out of God's family. So having that conversation on those bases,
Yeah.
is really powerful.
Yeah, and I think the thing to probably watch out for this week, since we're talking about rules, and Cody was kind of alluding to it too, where people are going to come in passion. The If they had a church upbringing, and there's maybe a legalistic background inside their church community, it's going to really affect what they believe about rules, and usually that goes two ways. One, they always feel like they're failing and they'll never live up, or they completely ran away from that because it just feels so judgmental and things like that. So I think it's one of those things to just be prepared for this week as you head into your group, that be patient, like try not to overreact when things are coming in, but also make sure that things aren't getting, there's not too many bold claims coming out that are hurting others and
That's
such.
right.
So anything else you would add in there, Cody, things to watch out for this week?
I think they're hard. I mean,
Hmm.
what are God's rules? What is God's law? I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, the story of Abraham and then the promises God made to Abraham, and then culminating in Moses. With the Ten Commandments, and that's a great, easy kind of established
Yeah.
set of God's laws. But religion is complete with so many different opinions and perspective on what
Hmm.
God's law really is. I mean, from the way we raise our kids to childbirthing kind of measures, to how we interact with our partners before we're married. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
much that has been interpreted as God's law. I think that's one of the hardest things that folks will raise. But
Hmm.
I was told that if I did X, Y, or Z, that I was, breaking God's law. Maybe some of that's true, some of that's not. It's really, really hard. Sometimes it's so hard that obviously, as a leader, I cannot answer. That's why I would always encourage when it gets to those kind of really in depth kind of things, if we don't have the biblical background to kind of
Yeah.
guide or show to, reach out to Anthony, reach out to,
Yeah.
to Chris as the leader, reach out to you and, try to get some
Hmm.
guidance.
Yeah.
You know, that's really an important thing. We don't have all the answers.
No.
Certainly, we shouldn't portray to
Yeah.
have all the answers.
And that's a completely acceptable thing to say inside group too, as well. Just, hey, I'm not really sure about this and I don't want to mislead you. So, hey, why don't we work on this together? We'll follow up with some people in the church after this. You
That's
can
right.
reach out to your community leader. They all have starting point people there that are able to support them. And then obviously we have our entire care team. So don't be afraid to embrace the conversations this week. And when you need help, we're here for you. So let us partner with you. Cody,
That's
thank
right.
you so much for joining us. And next week we'll be back. And next week's topic is Jesus. So we finally made it to Jesus inside starting point. So take care, everyone.